Welcome to Our Talent. I'm Juan Vera. I've taught classical guitar at Miami-Dade College for the past 28 years. The great Manuel Barrueco joins us today for an hour. Manuel Barrueco single-handedly, or perhaps ambidextrously, set the guitar in a new course. His visionary analysis of the state of the instrument during his time steered the guitar towards uncharted territory and ultimately to its modern worldwide path. Barrueco's recordings shed light on previously obscure figures such as 18th century Domenico Cimarosa or 20th century's Carlos Chavez by first decoding the internal musical logic of the former and then surely balancing the sweet-sour harmonic act of the latter. Additionally, Barrueco located previously undetected pockets of meaning and cells of insight in the well-established works of Manuel Ponce and Heitor Villalobos that were most likely never even contemplated by the composers. Barrueco stamped his signature tone with a fullness and roundness capable of carrying high emotional content and intent note for note, making the listener vibrate with the twists and turns of the music, living and experiencing it, and triggering not just implied but raw emotions. He further redefined the art of transcriptions and arrangements to the point of orchestration. Historical performance practices came alive in his recordings with greater persuasiveness than scholarly dissertations. Any repertoire he literally got his hands on quickly turned into the latest guitar sensation, catapulting him to a leading worldwide role. His technique is uncompromising and does not cut corners. While it is uncertain whether today's stars will be remembered 100 years into the future, that future was shaped by Manuel Barrueco. Manuel, welcome to the show. Thank you once again for taking time from your international touring schedule to join us.
That's very nice to be here, and thank you for those words.
Manuel, you're going to be performing locally in Miami, in the Miami area in June.
Right.
Are you bringing a mix of your well-known repertoire and new compositions as well?
It's actually it's going to be I think a pretty unique program. It's let me give you some background on it.
Yeah.
I went to the Barruecos, the family, the name, the last name Barrueco comes from a place called Fermosella in Spain, and because it is a very unique, rare name, it was easily found by a cousin of mine that actually wrote a book about it. So I went to this town, and so they have the records of the Barrueco family from my great-grandfather came from at least through the 1400s. And I went to this church, a local church, a medieval church, where all the Barruecos have been married and baptized. And so that got me thinking, this is an old medieval town, and my grandfather came from Spain, and he fought in what's called here the Spanish-American War, what is called in Spain the Cuban War, and what the Cubans called the Independence War. So he fought in that, but on the side of Spain. So when they lost, he went back to Spain and he died like a couple of years later. But my grandfather stayed, and that's with his mother over there. Having said that, it's about that. It's about the connections between Cuba and Spain. I begin with pieces by Narvaez, which who lived or was born right before the discovery. For Spain it was a discovery of the Americas, and then so it's just pieces by him. I play the Canción del Emperador, the song of the Emperor, which Baja del Contrapunto, and the variations on Guárdame las Vacas.
And this will be in the program, local program here.
Great. This is the beginning.
Yes.
And then I go to Cantos Yoruba de Cuba. So Yoruban chants from Cuba, which is actually songs that came from the African slaves that were brought to Cuba after the indigenous people died from bad treatment and European diseases. So these go right back to Africa, So they're beautiful songs. They really are. Then I go to Cervantes. Ignacio Cervantes was probably one of the first great nationalists. Were
the dances,
the Cuban dances. Yeah, so that's you begin to have the Creole movement in, and you see the combination of the African influence and the Spanish influence coming together. And then I finish the first half with a brilliant dance by Julian Urbón, who is like Cervantes, but 20th century and much more modern, obviously.
And that you recorded.
And that recorded.
Have the other ones been recorded recently?
I recorded the Yoruban chants before in a city called Cuba, and then the second half, it's again Cuban connections with Spain. So I play Granados, who very few people know. One of his parents, I think having his father was actually Cuban. So I played his Maja de Goya. And I also found a piece called A la Cubana, in the Cuban style, and I made a transcription of that, so I would play that.
Did you hear Mercadal's recording of La Maja de Goya? You remember that on the record?
Yes, I have that record. Yeah.
What do you think of it?
No, it was always so musical, and unique. I mean, he always had his own way. He didn't sound like anybody else.
What are your recent recording projects? What have you been?
I plan to record these things.
You plan to record it, so it's an upcoming.
This is now. I'm gathering information on how to put it together. I didn't mention that also we play some pieces by Albéniz because he also wrote a piece called Cuba, so it'll be there. Yes. So it's a connection between Spain and Cuba.
Why did you record Cimarosa and Chavez?
The Cimarosa was because I was doing a record that the first idea was out of Italian sonatas for guitar, so I had done some by Paganini and Giuliani and Scarlatti, and then I knew these pieces which I thought were really beautiful, and so I decided to include them.
Which approach did you take in making Chavez more palatable or more acceptable to a wider audience? How did you?
Well, also the reason I chose the Chavez was because the first recording that I did was out of Latin American music, So I wanted to showcase, to show some of the most important Latin American composers, and in my mind, for what I had been taught, Chavez was one of the very top ones, And I didn't, Well, I had become aware of the pieces because of Rey de la Torre in New York, because I was studying with him, and actually, I think Rey
did he play?
I think, yeah, he did play them. And in fact, I think he premiered them in New York, and Chavez was there, so I had a chance to meet Chavez. I mean, I was a kid; I was like 16 or 17. So anyway, so I wanted to tackle them. I wanted to do it.
Was Chavez hard to decipher, or did you find affinity towards the music?
It's a little bit different than the world I was used to. I mean, we're coming from Cuba, it's green and the palm trees, and with him I was hearing more desert, in that music. And there's also obviously a big indigenous element in the music, which is not in some of the Latin American music, like the Cuban music, for example. It doesn't seem to have that. I think as opposed to Ponce, with Ponce, I almost get the feeling in his music, because he wants to use the indigenous element, but he's looking at it from the outside. It's sort of like naive painting of the indigenous culture. I think with Chavez,
More
it was inside
yeah.
of it.
Yeah. And of course, with Cimarosa, you make Cimarosa's music seem that it was written yesterday. How did you approach him?
I every time I work on a piece, I try to get inside of it. I try to understand it. I try to find the what I think is the most beautiful way to look at it, the most convincing way to look at it, and then I try to portray and develop that. To me, it's a lot like you're trying to meet somebody, to get to know somebody. You have to have conversations. You have to listen. You have to see the reaction, and it's like that with a piece of music. You live with it. You see how you show it certain things. You see how it reacts, and until you find a way that it all seems to make sense and it works together.
Mm-hmm. Are you still motivated to come up with the next major arrangement that everyone will want to play, or are you now more in a reflective or contemplative phase?
I guess by my reaction, maybe no. I am not. I am not looking to see what I could transcribe.
I think challenging repertoire and innovative arrangements bring out the best in you. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I transcribe these pieces by Cervantes. I do 5 dances by him, and I also transcribe this a la Cubana by Granados. I mean, these are recent. Yes. I mean, also the Albanese I did before.
Have you reached your peak in terms of arrangement?
Again, like when I make one, it's not like I am looking to see what I could do. It's just that I either have a project and I need the music and I find it, or I could hear something and decide this would be great. That also.
Does all of this arrangement and transcribing mask a deeper wish or maybe frustration with a composition? Maybe a deep desire to compose?
It's a creative. It's a definitely creative outlet, and it's also it changes with the years, because at first I was trying to be as accurate as possible to the original music, and then one day I realized that we need to be fair to the instrument as well.
You're talking about legendary arrangements that have changed the course of guitar history that you made. Composers such as Mauro Giuliani or Fernando Sor would have had difficulty understanding the modern role of the non-composing guitarist.
But these are different times also, I mean. So, because also the music that they were playing at the time was actually also very, very popular at the time as well. I mean, in the 20th century, there seemed to be a break between the composer and the performer.
And now we're going to watch the great Manuel Barrueco in performance, and we'll come back in a moment.
creative. Be a hero. Be the solution. Be connected. Be innovative. Be global. Be successful. Be you. Be MDC. Be Miami-Dade College.
Welcome back. We're joined by one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Manuel Barrueco. All along, have you been simply looking for material that for which you have affinity, and others then attach these labels? Or were you actually asking, is this work intellectually stimulating?
I think there was an aspect of that, because that was the environment from which I was coming. I mean, when I was studying in school at Peabody in the early 70s, that was a lot of the atmosphere in the school. I mean, this is when 12-tone music is being written and all this, and I think the cerebral part of it was probably too dominant at the time, and I came from that.
Music with an intellectual purpose, or at least creating the impression of thought or some type of.
Well, I think that kind of needs to be there. I mean, in different levels, But I mean, there's some music that obviously have much more than others, and some music that purely intellectual also. For example, again, like 12-tone music. So.
You felt that you've moved this barrier in terms of bringing new music that is interesting, stimulating, perhaps never heard of before, and that challenges the public.
I was trying to do what I thought was the best music that the guitar had. I was trying to play what I thought was its best pieces. And I wanted to have to play a repertoire that would be of interest beyond just the guitar fans, but that if any musician would listen to it, they would enjoy it.
Your highly controlled form of playing cannot be separated from deep analysis and thinking, and it's at least almost a neurological test of sorts, wouldn't you say? You evoke thought. The way the hands move, the way that everything is planned, you cannot. It makes you think that there's a thinking activity going on.
I had the incredible pleasure the other day having dinner with Robert Parker, the famous wine critic, and I had a chance to ask him a question that I wanted to know the answer for, which is that sometimes when he reviews wines, sometimes he will say that a certain wine is an intellectual turn on.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, what do you mean by that? And because my best guess was similar to what you said. I thought perhaps what you mean is that you could only arrive to this wine through thought process,
yes.
And that's not what he had in mind.
Yeah, sort of intellectually direct or indirect things that hint at it.
Yeah. But there are things that happen that indicate there's a thought. I mean, if you're in the middle of the jungle and you see a straight line, there was probably a human being somewhere making that line. I mean, it's probably not. And I think yes. I mean, there's some things that happen in the interpretation and the playing that we know this is not just by chance or natural. I mean, yes. there's a thought process. There's a system behind it.
Has the learning of new works at this stage of your career become more challenging, dealing with new repertoire, new pieces that you have to learn, memorize?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it is more of a challenge in a way. It's I think that on the other hand, I know better the guitar than I ever have before. And hopefully that will compensate with some of it.
In terms of the learning, would you say that the pieces that you learned during your teens and 20s are the easiest for your muscle memory to recall?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Except yes, for sure. The longer I know them, the more they are ingrained in there. However, through the years, I've changed some things. So what is funny that sometimes if I try to pick up something from the past, it may revert back to it, not necessarily to the last version of it, but a couple before. That can happen.
It's so well ingrained.
Yeah.
But looking for almost metaphysical certainty in memorizing music, for example, can that sometimes backfire? In other words, you almost have to accept the possibility of forgetfulness in order to be able to play at all.
Well, of course that can happen. I mean, it can happen. The body is, and the mind and being a human being is what it is. We just try to understand it the best that we can, with its limitations, and so we can get the best out of it.
How do you know when you know?
I never feel full certainty. I mean, when I go out to play, I mean, as you know, being playing yourself, you don't know how the hands are going to react that day. You don't know how your mind is going to react, and that is part of the beauty of it. That's what makes it human.
You used to play pieces in the air in front of the guitar, not making contact with the instrument.
I mean, there are two reasons for that. One is it helps with the memory in the sense that when you play and you hear the right sound, it confirms that the information is correct. But if you don't hear any sounds, then in your mind you have the information clearly. Another very good reason to do this is that you can practice the pieces without using force, so you don't get tired. So sometimes before a concert or so, I will do that just to remind myself of the movements without actually exercising pressure.
You used to play right hand only without the left, playing in the air, of course, intentionally playing completely out of tune, moving pieces to other frets, effectively changing most of the notes. Is the search for security necessarily torturous?
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to make it as difficult as possible for myself to challenge. Because what happens, if I can just say quickly, is that what happens with the memory, once it becomes a muscle memory or an unconscious memory, sometimes we think that we're thinking about it, but we're not. It's just happening automatically. So the goal of all these exercises is to force us to think, to make sure that the memory is not only subconscious, but conscious as well.
And also because the fear is real when you're performing, the complexity involved. I remember on one of your Japan concerts making the rounds on YouTube, just before the beginning of Catalonia, you look up as if saying, oh God, help me get through this, or maybe get me out of here.
That's probably the way I felt.
Is the self-inflicted, is that the self-inflicted price for being a perfectionist?
I've been thinking about that. I've been wondering. Let me tell you a story, because you told me you had Pepe here, and I remember calling him one time. I was still, I don't know how old I was, maybe 19 or something like that. And the first time that I played the Rodrigo de Aranjuez, it was kind of a traumatic experience for me. I wasn't really ready to play, and I went out, and it was not a good thing. And I've always been a nervous player anyway. So then one day we're in school, and Angel Romero is playing on television with the Boston Pops, and he's like throwing kisses to the audience, and he's playing the hell out of the thing. It was amazing what he was doing. So I called Pepe, who I know. I said, what's going on? What's going on with me? How come I know I can play it, but I cannot do it. And he said, typical Pepe, he says, but just enjoy it. He said, go out there, you have this beautiful music, you have this audience, just enjoy the moment. You know what? Next time I did it, that helped. Because I think you can also doubt things to the point that you paralyze the body from so
it's a feast, he said, right? It's a celebration. He said it's a feast. It's to.
Well, that's what I remember with me. He just basically told me enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm saying is I think the point that he was trying to say, you work really hard at it, but then at the end you have to let the body do what it can do. Let it do it.
Yes.
Don't overburden it. Don't doubt it too much, or it'll paralyze you.
Very well, and now we're going to, again, watch the great Manuel Barrueco in performance, and we'll be back.
Be creative. Be a hero. Be the solution. Be connected. Be innovative. Be global. Be successful. Be you. Be MDC. Be Miami-Dade College.
Welcome back. We're joined by the great Manuel Barrueco, one of the true legends in the guitar world. Manuel, continuing along the same lines, many guitarists hope that the next note will come out. When Pepe Romero was here, we discussed creating the conditions where it's almost inevitable that the note will come out, or at least where the player is not at the complete mercy of probabilities. Where do you fall of that divide?
To me, the basically two systems that are going on. One is where you are commanding your fingers, your body, everything what to do at every moment. And that trains your muscle memory. And then the other one where you just let it happen. And I think it's a balance of both things. I think it's important to be able to control every moment. But we're humans, we're humans. So when you get into a pressure situation, you cannot just rely on that. You have to let the body and the mind do what it can do. On the other hand, that's no way to prepare. If you prepare like that, you're not going to go anywhere. So you have to be ready for the worst. And then when you're out there, it's kind of like
sort of a pessimistic attitude. In terms of being prepared, you have to approach things pessimistically. That things can happen or go the wrong way.
But I don't think that's being pessimistic. I think just being realistic. But
even being overly optimistic will lead to problems because the player might not be prepared for things that will happen.
We have to understand how it works. To me, if I'm performing something, it's like a moving train. And you may land on top of it or not, but you have to be very careful how you do that in and out. And this could be, let's say, the muscle of the just unconsciousness going on. You can commit, but you cannot shock it. If you think too much, you can shock it. So one has to be careful.
Well, I remember you mentioned once that the guitar was at the verge of being impossible. And when you think of all the complexity, the memory, it might very well be.
No, I think it also depends on how much we challenge ourselves. I think whatever instruments you play, if you push it to extremes, it's going to be difficult.
Do you feel that you understand other players' technique and that they understand yours?
Well, I don't know what other things about mine, but I don't know if I can say that I understand. Because I know there are things that I know that I don't know. But I certainly make my own opinions from watching them. Sometimes I don't understand. I'll give you an example. For example, for me to go as fast as you can, to be most efficient, you have to have small movements so you don't waste any time. And I remember playing in concert with somebody. I will not tell you his name. Okay, Aldo Miola. And now who has this unbelievable technique. I've never seen anything like that. And his left hand is just like flying all over the place. So that blew my theory right there,
Yeah, because there are similarities among players, but there are many differences. Some will sound too thin, others will plug the string, others will push more. Differences in degrees of tension and movements, as you say. So it can't be said that there is one approach. It cannot be said, right?
Well,
there are many approaches.
Yeah, sure.
When we hear your recordings and we identify your sound and we say that is Manuel Barrueco, how do you physically formulate that to yourself when you are creating it? In other words, specifically how much string pressure, how much acceleration on the stroke, how much diagonal, how much knuckle segment, how do you conceptualize your right hand technique?
Well, I believe in listening to the body. I offer things to them. I try to understand how the body wants to move. I offer a way to do it, and I see how it reacts. If it works well, I may be on the right track. but I try not to overthink it, because there's no way that I can understand how the hand really moves. I mean, the fingers have different degrees of dexterity, they're connected differently, they have different lengths, they come out of different places in the hand. So it's not like 4 or 5 equal members. They all have their own characteristics. So,
are you trying to recreate the sound of the Manuel Barrueco of the first recordings, or the second, or of some point in the past? Or are you recreating a new Manuel Barrueco on every recording? Or
I think it just happens naturally if you're in search, you know, if you love what you're doing, if you try to do the best as you can. When I did those first recordings, I really didn't have that much of a concept of sound. I just wanted to have a strong sound. Later, I began to develop, you know, I began to form over an opinion. I wanted to be more transparent, more clear, more like a diamond. And I didn't want to hear any fuzziness in it. And if you could have a little spark on it, I would love that, you know. Because also the way we hear sound, the taste of sound changes. For example, the sound that Segovia had, that everybody just raving about it. Now it sounds dull in comparison, and it got a lot brighter. So what I try to find is I try to find sort of a classic sound that will always be beautiful, maybe not necessarily in style, but. And that's what I try to find a sound that has everything, the highs, the lows, the middle.
And physically, are you clear on how you play? What is the movement? What is the nature of the movement?
To
of
a certain
feeling,
point. To the
point that you could explain, this is Manuel Barrueco, maybe write an article, which I think will be very interesting to
I think
to
so.
read.
I mean, within reason, yeah.
How many lectures would Aaron Shearer have had to attend in order to gain a technical understanding similar to what Pepe Romero obtained in the south of Spain? I heard that he had attended many of Lopez Ramos's lecture, of course, not from the south of Spain. Shearer.
Yeah.
How did he obtain his information? Do you know?
Well, I think Shearer. What happened with Shearer is that he dedicated his life to the guitar, and to create his method of playing. A lot of it was very rational, but I think it is my opinion. Not everybody will agree with me that some of these ideas remain to be tested, to see and refine further. So I think what I find is that there's some really great groundbreaking material in it, and there's some things that need to be refined, need to be, So I like, for example, I like baseball. It would be like if I try to design a way how one becomes a great hitter, how to hit the ball without actually having done it.
Yeah. Well, I remember Juan Mercadal, one of your early teachers, questioning Aaron Shearer's credibility when Shearer himself could not play. But was that actually an advantage in terms of advanced students not playing? And exposing himself to criticism of very keen players such as yourself? It might have been devastated
for him.
For him to.
Well,
might have been better that he didn't play.
I don't think that needs to be. I think it has its good side and it has its bad side. Sometimes when you have a great player, maybe sometimes the views can be too narrow because they had a system that worked so well for them. So maybe although Shearer had a very, very defined way as well.
And there are many examples in other instruments of teachers who have been very influential and who never played. Yeah. You cite Alicia de la Rocha as one of your teachers because of what you learned by listening to her. Yet her Spanish interpretations are often quite free and relaxed. As with Aaron Shearer, did you learn from her by rejecting her approach, sort of by opposition to what she was doing?
No, I mean what I did with Spanish music had nothing to do with Shearer. I mean that's not even anything. What I learned from him, I would say, I think he forced me to think about things, and so I fought with him a lot.
But what about Alicia de la Rocha? You said you learned from her in the Spanish style, the pianist, but her style is very free, very relaxed often, where she takes her time slow down, which you are not in the habit of doing. What did you learn from Alicia de la Rocha?
Boy, well, that's tough. What did I learn from her?
Or maybe
it was like a model. I just think there's a very strong Spanish sense to her music. There's an elegance, there's an understanding.
Could it be that she played unlike guitarists, and that's what you found appealing?
Well, but you know, there are a lot of different guitarists out there. You know, I mean, and you know, some are musical and some are not, and so there's I don't know. There was the story also. I don't know. I think it was Chrysler, or I think it was Fritz Chrysler, that somebody went backstage and said, my God, that's a beautiful sounding violin, and he picked it up and said, I don't hear anything, you know. So
Hi-Fis.
I thought it was Fritz Chrysler, but maybe it was Hi-Fis. I don't know. So it's a little bit like that. I mean, the guitar itself doesn't play; it's whoever is doing it.
When you cite non-guitarists as influencing you the most, does this open the door to your being self-taught on the instrument and ultimately dismissing everything you ever heard from the guitarist who taught you?
No. It's a combination of all of our experiences. It's the teachers that we had, the people that we listened to. Yes, I rejected some of the things that Shearer specifically said, but that also helped me to catapult to find some other way of doing it. I took that challenge.
And Ray de la Torre, you've never spoken much of that. Was he influential or not in your?
You know what's funny? I have a new very talented Spanish student, Andrea González Caballero is her name, and she came from Spain. And I learned something from Ray de la Torre, which is like to stop the strings with the thumb as you play the next string. So if you play the fifth, you play the fourth as you stop in the fifth. And the only person who had ever taught me that was Ray de la Torre. You know, which of course makes sense because Ray studied with Jobert as well, and I forget who. You know, so it makes sense. You begin to see this connection. So with Ray, what I remember the most was he was doing a lot of work on how to stop the strings. You know, that was the big thing, and then some,
which can be overdone.
It could be overdone, yeah.
Did Juan Mercadal understand your musical character, or was he looking for a dynamic range and contrast level beyond your comfort zone?
I was too young, you know. For me, it was first of all, I was. I mean, coming from Cuba and then being able to meet him, and I had heard about him all of my life, and he's been so nice to me and taking me to his house, and you know, I think it was an inspiration to be with him. And let me just say one thing, because I think I realize it's an important thing with me. One of the first, you know, probably the first big influence that I had was Leo Brouwer. I didn't study with him, but he would come to Santiago to master classes. What he told me was, be a musician, not only a guitarist. And I took that to heart. I went to Mercadal, you know, and Mercadal would say, learn the trumpet. You have to learn how to carry a line, you know. So there was a connection. I went to Shearer, and Shearer is like, no guitarists are any good. None of them are musicians. You have to do. So I grew kind of with a disrespect for all that. You know, now I can appreciate more what I did. You know, we're all making the best that we can with it. You know, so so I always challenge. I always question things. You know, and it's my personality anyway. If everybody's going that way, I go the other. You know, that's just. You know, that's
well, it's sort of a relate. I remember Mercadal telling me guitarists should not play for guitarists. We should play for the general public, in the sense that he was trying to avoid the overall guitaristic mentality.
Yeah, but you know, but yes, I understand that also. I think, for example, you see sometimes in some festivals that it's guitarists playing for guitarists, playing music written by guitarists, being reviewed by guitarists, you know, going to bed with the guitarists. You know, it's like, please, you know, I mean. So, but that I believe, it's a great thing social in the sense that all these people can go there and be with people that love the same thing and have a nice time together. However, if you're trying to become the best musician you can, it ain't going to happen that way. You have to open your horizon. I tell my students, for example, if you want to become a great chef, it's not going to happen if all you do is eat at McDonald's. Not going to happen. You know.
I remember talking to Mercadal once about interpretation. I asked him, what's your formula? And he took a paper and spent like 3 minutes writing all the dynamic indications from pianissimo to fortissimo. He handed it to me and said, in every piece have all these ranges. What would you make of that?
I didn't know that. What I can tell you from his playing is that he had a unique style. I don't know where that came from. And he's one of the most singing players I had ever heard in my life.
He started very young, I think 3 or 4.
Yeah,
with Severino Lopez.
Well, maybe that's where he came from. But he sings with the guitar more than just about anybody else I ever heard. With the instrument. And there's a very strong sense of rhythm, more than So in a way, he was much more in the line of a normal musician than many vast majority of guitar, especially with generation. I think.
All right, and we are going to watch the great Manuel Barrueco in performance, and we'll be back in a moment.
Be creative. Be a hero. Be the solution. Be connected. Be innovative. Be global. Be successful. Be you. Be MDC. Be Miami-Dade College.
Welcome back. We're joined by the great Manuel Barrueco, one of the most influential guitarists in the history of the instrument. Manuel, would you say that the moderation is closer to your essence as a guitarist?
Moderation in what?
Moderation in every way. Moderation in dynamics, moderation in risks, moderation in...
No.
How would you define your essence?
I'm trying to do the best I can. You know, I mean, what I do is and basically this is the way when I work with my students. I try to identify what can be done better, and they go to work at it. Whatever it is, I mean, technique, musicality, whatever. You're just always trying to see how could it be done better? How could it be done better? That's basically.
Do you find that critics or people who come from outside the guitar are looking for an exaggerated range of dynamics, for example, something that.
Yeah, well, see, that I don't care so much about because what I do is what I love, and I'm not going to change that because what somebody else may think. I mean, I may change it maybe slightly here or there, but even with I have some amazing students going to competitions, and what I tell them, go do what you love. I mean, forget the competition because they start playing, thinking of who the judges are and what they should be playing. Just show them what you have. But I mean, I can't be anybody else. This is who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you have to be centered. Who you are.
Yeah.
And can you go outside of that? This is why I had the question of Mercadal. I knew Mercadal, and maybe the things that he was looking for were quite exaggerated from the point of view of what a guitar could expect. And in that sense, he required more and more, when in fact it would not have been possible.
Right.
But a more point of view, or a point of view that regards more moderation, would have had those limits in mind.
But it also depends on what you're looking for. Look, the other day we were recording Son de Pavans, Milan Pavans, couldn't be much simpler than that for the guitar, and in 3 hours with the three of them. Because it also depends to what level you want to take it, how demanding you are with each note. I mean, it's not only the dynamic, it's also when you have a vision, when you know that it can sound better, when you know that it can be better, and to try to get that, it's not easy. And you're pushing the technique as well.
Is the basic, your basic idea of a phrase to go up 3/4 of the way, or maybe a little bit more, and then come down at the end?
That would be predictable and boring at the end. I don't want to be predictable.
How do you approach it? How do you approach
taking each thing for what they are?
Identify every particular.
Let's say that instead of pieces, let's say there are people, and we have 3 people here. I don't want to have a mold to put them all into the same mold. You have to figure out what they have, and help them shape that. And each piece of music has a life of its own. It has possibilities of their own, and not just for me to force that on them. I could. Some people do that. Segovia, I think, was more like that. And look how immensely successful he was. That's not who I am.
Since the topic of Mercadal keeps coming back, I remember talking to him about this, and he said to me, before I learned the first note, I look at the music, I studied it, I decide exactly what I'm going to do, and when I know, then I learn the first note. Is that something that he taught you, or is that the way you approach it? Or
that specifically, I don't remember him talking to me about that. But I can tell you one thing: I hear that in his playing.
Yeah.
I mean, what in his recording that we were mentioning before, there's a purpose for every note there. He's singing every note, and that did not happen by chance. That did not happen with previous, preparation.
Well, and even in your Villalobos study number 7 with the scales, you navigate those scales with phrasing and direction. So it is always the musical perspective, which is what Mercadal believed in.
Well, I think what I tell my students is one thing is to be, let's say, to have a great technique to play fast. Another thing is to play fast musically.
Yeah,
it's a different level, and I try to approach things, musically. Sure, I mean, if you have something that you think is special, you want to show off. You want to show it to the people. We mistake not to. You want to flaunt it sometimes, but I think.
And there's an element of that clearly in your playing. Sometimes pushing tempos to the limit.
I was trying to hide it.
Where you don't succeed in Sevilla, for example.
Actually, but wait a second. No, I don't push the tempos as fast as I can. I push the tempos to where I think the piece wants and that it can take.
Yes.
I don't think. Well, no.
But I don't think I've heard a faster Sevilla than yours.
Really?
Yeah. In an actual live performance.
Honestly, I didn't. Honest to God, I didn't realize that. This is the first time that I played it for Segovia one time. He told me it was too fast. I had one chance to play for him, and he stopped me. He said, too fast.
Well, isn't that the usual comment? Either too fast or too slow. That's why you get.
Yeah.
Well, maybe people don't have anything else to say.
But the question is, how do we decide? And again, like with the students, you want to teach them. So how do you decide? I'm going to tell you too fast. He's going to tell you too slow. How are you going to decide what's right and what's wrong?
Can Segovia ever be ignored, or is everybody simply moving either in his direction or away with him firmly planted in the middle?
I think it's a system. I think we're part of a system. I mean, what he did was amazing. He's been a great influence. Some of this will be taken and refined. Some of this will be forgotten. Some of the things that he did. I also think that, unfortunately, we're not seeing much before that. For example, when you hear some recordings of Jobet, there's a lot of similarities between Jobet and Segovia, which makes me think that maybe there's something more like that regard.
Yeah.
But we don't know that.
There might have been a line there.
Yeah. They had to be.
But is your generation now more appreciative of how Segovia maintained his disciplined approach, technique, and even agility all the way up to his 90s? Now that you're getting older, you're more appreciative of that.
I am very much so. I mean, I don't know what I know that I often find myself defending him because a lot of people are attacking him, and I used to do that. I used to do that, and I think it was a little bit of youth, but at one point you realize it's easy to criticize and very hard to do something. And what he did was amazing. Now, I don't want to sound like Segovia, so it's not that, but what he did, and the time that he did it, and how he dedicated his life, and I think it may never be repeated.
Yeah. It's funny because talking about Segovia, I'm thinking the type of personality he had, and people talk about the topic itself is interesting between flamenco and classical guitar. I wonder if, out of the blue, if Manitas de Plata, I don't remember, and Andrés Segovia ever got together, whether they would have anything at all to talk other than maybe the weather conditions. Manitas de Plata was quite a character. I don't know if you ever saw him play or.
I saw him. I never saw him play. I saw videos on television and so. Yeah.
What do you think of Cacho Tirao, who used to play with Piazzolla quite often? Have you seen him?
I saw him play actually the premiere of the Double Concerto. Yeah, I was very impressed with his playing. I mean, listen, in my old age, I much more try to see the positive, than the negative. I try not to see that. And what I found with him, he has strong personality. He's played with a lot of things to say. Was his technique as refined as a classical player? No. Was his sound? No. But in some ways he was even more musical than a lot of the classical players.
Videos of him playing with Master Piazzolla, where he's improvising. And apparently, Piazzolla thought highly of him because they would often
I'm
get
sure,
together.
Yeah. There is. Well, I've heard a couple of these tango players, and it's pretty amazing. A couple of them. I mean, they obviously know their stuff. They know what they're doing with that music. One thing I wanted to tell you, speaking about flamenco, and I don't know if I told you this. We talked about this before. You mentioned Alicia Rocha as an influence. One time I was in a festival in France, and I was walking towards Paco de Lucia. The first time I heard a concert was outdoors, and he was playing. And as I was getting close, I'm here, and I'm here like, and I was like, what is that? What is that? It's just this power. And I remember thinking, I want some of that in my playing. Even older, I remember playing with Al Di Meola and this sensuality he's playing. I think, I want some of that in my playing. So I think I think the important thing is kind of to I don't know if it's to stay open, but just not become critical to the point that one stops listening.
And ultimately, I mean, a lot of the technical, a lot of the technique comes from there, and many of the things that Pepe Romero talks about that are unique to this insight that he obtained in this area of the south of Spain. I mean, where else could you have gotten that information?
Yeah, he came to give a class with my students one time, and to me this was fascinating because it's the only time that I've seen it. Because I think I do that also. As a student was playing, he was just like intensely looking into their eyes, and I think what he was doing is that he was trying to read where they were mentally, where the state of mind was as they were playing. I think that I know I do that. But it's not intentionally. Yeah. I just try to figure where is how are they thinking this thing, especially if they go through some problems. Say, okay, now where.
I remember I had one of my students, a 9-year-old, who was a very good player, played for Pepe Romero, and he spent like 10 minutes explaining to her why having the pinky of the right hand coming up was not a good thing, and he went on and on and on into detail with a 9-year-old, which I thought was fascinating. But
yeah, I mean, he's
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. It's been a great pleasure, Manuel, to have you on the show,
Thank you.
we hope that we can meet again and talk again. It's always a wonderful thing to have you here. Thank you for coming. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of Our Talent, and we'll soon be back. I'm Juan Carlos Vera.